Hello everyone, and so far we have no new information about Chapter 4, so it's time to summarize the key characters of the already familiar third chapter. And our first character is Ollie. The most mysterious character in Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 is the voice from the phone who introduces himself as Ollie. Throughout Poppy Playtime Chapter 3, Ollie helps us in every way possible to find the items we need. We still don't know who he was and why we don't hear him anymore after Catnap's death. So far, this character has not been revealed to us, and all we can know about him is his name. And of course, we heard his voice. Maybe Ollie is a really positive character, but are you sure that we talked to him? Who is Ollie? The release of the third chapter was a month ago, but there are still a lot of theories surrounding this game and its characters, and our Ollie is no exception. And of course, the most attentive and enthusiastic players have already come up with a few theories about Ollie, including that we already know him and that he is the already known enemy prototype. It would be interesting to see how at the end we meet Ollie in one of the rooms, but suddenly a mechanical arm grows out of his body and we learn that Ollie is actually prototype. At the beginning of our conversation with him, we learn that he is well acquainted with Poppy herself. Even Poppy herself speaks of him as a positive character and convinces us that he can be trusted. And in practice, this is really true because he helps us, tells us where the objects are, tells us where to go next, who to avoid, and so on. According to Ollie and Poppy, all these monsters need us to stop the most important evil, prototype. However, we know that all these monsters are guided by very strange thoughts. For example, Poppy herself many times talked about revenge to all the monsters who bullied them. But at the same time, Ollie never said anything about revenge. In fact, it turns out that some monsters use us to fight other monsters. And in this case, we are just pawns in the hands of these monsters, and our main goal is to help these poor monsters and at the same time to save our lives and get out. I didn't see any intrigue within Playtime, and even at the beginning of the second chapter, Poppy wanted to help us get out of this interesting place, but apparently she needs us for something more. Of course, I would like to just send everyone to hell and try to escape myself, but on the other hand, we are already trapped, and to survive and get out of here, we have to follow the instructions of the other monsters. At least that's the tactic we have at the moment. How it all turns out in the end, we will know only in the future. But unlike Poppy, Ollie no longer seems so strange and incomprehensible. At least he doesn't change his mood at the snap of his fingers, and he has some credibility. He always tells us only useful things, and in general, Ollie is a very nice guy, and thanks to him, we at least understand our final goal, to defeat the main villain prototype. Is Ollie a human or a monster? It's a very interesting question that definitely deserves attention. Ollie himself does not admit who he really is, but we can already make the assumption that he is 99% human. Ollie is the last remaining person, or should I say the last surviving child in the orphanage who found some safe place, and from there he contacts us using a phone that was created for Playtime employees. And I wonder how he knew we were at the orphanage, because at the beginning he told us that he could see that we were confused. But how could he know that about us, and how could he even know that there was anyone in the shelter? Of course, there's a possibility that he's watching us with video cameras, and when I first saw them, I was at a loss. But after a while, I calmed down because I realized that thanks to them, we are being watched not by some horrible creature or prototype, but by our goody Ollie. And there are cameras all over the orphanage. But why are we so sure that Ollie is watching us, and what are the arguments in favor of this version? Why can't Ollie be a monster, and how does he know Poppy? I'm pretty sure that Ollie is a doll like Poppy, or any other toy that comes to life. A monster in a word. Either way, we realize he knows this place very well, and you can say monsters can't know the orphanage area perfectly, but you have to realize that they've taken over this place a long time ago, and I'm sure they've studied every square millimeter of this creepy area. It is unlikely that Ollie is a former employee of Playtime, because if it were so, the protagonist would recognize his former colleague and at least introduce himself to him, but we didn't see it. But apparently the protagonist learns about Ollie's existence for the first time in his life. And remember Miss Delight's words where she wonders if we're the only surviving Playtime employee, which means that Ollie could very well be a monster because we're the only survivors of this horrible place. And that's not just saying that, it's saying that Ollie could very well be a monster. Or Miss Delight just doesn't know there are orphan survivors at the orphanage. Ollie could very well be hiding and showing no signs of existence. But then there's the question of what he was eating and how long he was hiding. And yet there are arguments in favor of the fact that Ollie is not a monster or the result of an experiment, but just an ordinary child who managed to survive after all the horror that happened. Ollie we meet only in Playcare, and if he has been here for a long time, he would have explored this location, and if he was a monster, he would probably have moved on. Based on all of the above, I can't say for sure who Ollie really is, but I'm more inclined to believe that he is a human. Write your opinion about this question in the comments. What if Ollie isn't human, but he's not a monster? What if Ollie is the prototype? Back to the fact that Poppy knows who is hiding under the name Ollie, And we also know that the prototype helped orphans get out of the orphanage with the help of Theodore, who will become Catnap in the future. Also, the prototype can change voices, and he could probably hear someone's voice and memorize it. Also very strange is the fact that after the prototype destroyed Catnap, Ollie stopped contacting us. There are a few oddities in the prototype's behavior. If his ultimate goal was the death of Catnap, why could not it be done in the beginning? If Catnap completely trusts him, and even it is possible to tell that considers it the god, then why it was so long to wait? And why it was necessary to destroy Catnap at all if he is a very strong assistant and thus completely trusted the prototype? And why did the prototype even decide to help us? Even with more and more attempts to reveal the prototype as a character, we still don't know anything about him. I don't understand how that can be. Even in Chapter 3, the prototype is just a giant mechanical arm. His identity or his motives are still mystery number 1 to us in Poppy Playtime. Even the scientists themselves admit that the prototype holds some valuable information, but unfortunately, they don't tell us what they mean. Perhaps they mean its intelligence because the prototype, even when locked up, was able to create a laser pointer to escape. The prototype can manipulate people, and that's a fact. At least Theodore's story gives us a sense of that. Perhaps the prototype was able to manipulate the monsters, and as a result they went berserk, and under all the chaos, the prototype was able to escape. Which means he could have manipulated many others to carry out his plan. But we don't know what it's all about yet. But I'm sure that we are the missing piece of the puzzle that the prototype needed to carry out his plan. And that's why the prototype can help us get further and further away. As we move further into the orphanage, we destroy more and more monsters, which after their death are likely to go to our prototype. But in this case, why he needs us if we can safely say that his power is really amazing and he can cope with absolutely any monster alone. And why, for example, in the second chapter, he did not appear before us and did not tell us everything. Perhaps to carry out his plan, he needs everything to go smoothly and quietly, and he would be like a mere observer who would in no way want all the monsters to die. I think the prototype realizes that he can't do everything quickly and correctly if everyone knows that he's the one responsible for all the horror at playtime. And that's why he remembered the voice of one of the orphans he helped escape and decided to brazenly steal his voice. And in this case, no one would recognize him, and he would manage to deceive not only the main character, but also the Poppy doll itself, so that there would be no unnecessary questions about whether to trust this strange hand. Of course you shouldn't. And that's why the prototype decided to pretend to be someone to steer the protagonist in the right direction and to mislead Poppy herself while remaining in the shadows. I think it's a very ingenious decision. I think it will continue until the final preparations for the prototype's plan are in place. And what his plan is, I think we'll find out in Chapter 4, or at least I'd like to believe so. And if you look at it from this side, we can safely say that the theory that Ollie is a prototype has the right to exist and would be a very interesting plot twist. What do you think Ollie really is? A human? A monster? A living toy? Or is Ollie our ultimate prototype enemy? I look forward to hearing what you think in the comments. Who is Miss Delight? A kind teacher who taught orphans at the orphanage school, or a mentally ill woman who is driven only by the desire for revenge and murder? At first it might seem that Miss Delight is just another Playtime Co. monster like all the others, but I'm sure that after watching this video, we will change our opinion about this girl 180 degrees. Let's continue with our hilariously interesting video. Let's agree that we will start our story about this character from the very beginning of her life in the orphanage until her last breath in the 3rd chapter. Or maybe it's all a lie and Miss Delight really did survive and you'll meet her in the future? At the time of this project, there was a casting call for the role of a teacher who had to be friendly, and it was very important that she could get along with the children. And after the necessary candidates were selected, they were all turned into puppets, and we see one of them in the 3rd chapter. But to get the full picture, we need a little backstory. After being turned into dolls, Ms. Delight and her sisters, said to be about 8, taught the children and all was well until the so-called Joy Hour. The Joy Hour was a big event that took place at the Playtime Co factory on August 8, 1995. Many things happened that day, but we are most interested in this fragment where Miss Delight and her sisters are chasing one of the employees. We will tell you about the events after this incident, right after a little bit about the appearance of our lovely girl, so that in case you recognize her at night, and if it happens, you better look closely into her eyes and back away slowly. Miss Delight has golden lacquered hair and a crimson ribbon on her head. She wears a tattered crimson polka dot skirt, a torn acid-colored short-sleeved lantern shirt with a white collar, and a blue apron with an apple picture and a torn right strap. Her once wide smile is now completely distorted, exposing flesh and teeth. We will talk more about her smile, for it holds many mysteries and secrets. As I said before, Hour of Joy, Miss Delight, and the others were quietly teaching innocent children, but apparently our doll was the first to be influenced, and together with the other monsters, she started a massacre at Playtime Co. However, after happy hour, she and her sisters were locked up in the school. Supposedly, they were all trapped there by Catnap, and when they were left all alone, that's when things got interesting. Of course, as time went by, there wasn't enough food for everyone, and her sisters decided to deprive her of food, which was the first call to Miss Delight's madness. Every day her hunger grew stronger and her anger towards the other sisters increased. And at the critical moment, our Miss Delight decided that the only way to survive was to kill all of her sisters and then eat them one by one. Which eventually happens, because out of her entire cast we only see one insanely angry and hungry puppet. The fact that her main trigger was hunger is reflected in the 3rd chapter. Even in deep sleep, her driving force is hunger. While locked up, Miss Delight felt the presence of a creature. 99% of the time it was Catnap, and it was his presence that compelled her to create her favorite barb. Barb is her own unique weapon, made out of pencils, rope, and most likely some kind of plastiline or chewing gum. Well, let's say she has a weapon, because that's normal in this environment. But how would you feel if you found out that for that time in her loneliness and hunger, she started to think of Barb as a real person and almost not his friend? I think that at least gives us a sense of how seriously mentally ill Miss Delight is. And it was Barb who caused what happened between Miss Delight and her sisters. At the critical moment when the other sisters locked the kitchen door from our Miss Delight, it was Barb who encouraged her and told her that she had to kill everyone else to survive. Since then, Miss Delight and Barb have been the most loyal of partners. But how exactly did she kill all the other sister teachers? The answer to that question is revealed in the 3rd chapter of Poppy Playtime. I think many of you have noticed that as soon as we look at her, she immediately becomes motionless and does not move. But as soon as we take our eyes off Miss Delight, she immediately tries to come closer to us. It is possible that she thinks that if she stops moving, everyone will think she is dead, and no one will approach her. And as soon as they turn away, they will meet our Miss Delight one-on-one, and her mysterious barb will help her kill the others. Maybe that's how she killed the sisters, one after the other, hoping that no one would notice that she was missing. But you have to admit that it would be strange if there were 8-9 of you, and after a while there were only 4. I think in that case, the other sisters would have realized who was responsible for her disappearance and killed Miss Delight immediately. So I'm more inclined to believe that she pretended to be motionless to make everyone think she was dead, and then killed them all at once. So we see how crazy, bloodthirsty, and powerful this particular doll is. And in case you didn't know, all the organs of the real person who was cast as Miss Delight were transplanted into the doll, so inside she still feels exactly the same needs as we do. Her hunger was so strong that she was even willing to eat her own children. And that's where the other question comes in. We have talked about the fact that she feels the same emotions as we do, and that means that all the time until she was mastered, she had to eat something. And based on that, there is a theory that the part of the children that were saved by her sisters were eaten after the rest of the dolls were finished. One day she discovers that the door that kept her locked up is open, which means it's time to get out. And as soon as she did, Catnap appeared before her eyes. At first, Miss Delight was furious and wished the cat dead for imprisoning her and forcing her to live through the horror that had happened to her. But after a while, there was a dialogue between Miss Delight and Catnap, and our doll realized that it was not Catnap who locked her up. We all know that Catnap only acts in concert with the prototype, and it is this main villain of the whole Playtime Co., and is responsible for everything that happened to Miss Delight. However, the doll realized that she couldn't handle them because their power is so much greater than hers. And she also learned that the prototype made a decision to choose the strongest sister among all the sisters and continue his work with her. The result of this meeting was the agreement that Miss Delight will be an ally of Catnap and the prototype, and will report absolutely everything to them. Now let's talk about the introduction of our main character to Miss Delight. Remember the scene where we just entered the orphanage school, and Ollie told us that our dialogue with him was over because he couldn't contact us because of the location. But just before the call went out, Ollie warned us that we were not alone in the room and that it was unlikely that whoever was next to us was our friend. And then we hear Miss Delight on the loudspeaker addressing all the students. It seems like she either doesn't understand what's going on because her mind has gone completely insane, or she's playing mind games with us. Almost immediately, Miss Delight decides to talk to us. But what's most important in this situation is that she recognizes us and is very surprised that we're still alive, and she warns us to get out of here and stop looking for our missing colleagues because Catnap won't be happy about this. But actually, I think she's glad we're here because she thinks we're easy prey, which means Miss Delight might have new food. And she talks about it later, telling us that she will come to us if we continue our search. But we are not cowards and stay in this place, and as soon as we get to the generator, Miss Delight appears right in front of us. And also here we get a confirmation of the theory that she is sure that if she stands still when we look at her, she will appear dead and can easily kill us or anyone else. Maybe she is afraid of light, or there are some other reasons for such aggressive behavior at the moment of switching on the backup power generator. And the end of our story with her was her death. By pulling a lever, we were able to crush her body with a giant metal door. We also know that the prototype makes dead toys part of itself, and it is possible that Miss Delight's remains eventually became part of the prototype. Or maybe the prototype took Miss Delight's body and decided to resurrect her, because no matter what anyone says, no one wants to lose such a powerful assistant. And we'll probably see her in the 4th chapter of Poppy Playtime. And remember, I promised to tell you about her smile. Since Miss Delight is a puppet, the wounds on her body won't heal, which means they were caused by someone stronger than her or a group of characters. And I'm 90% sure that Joker's smile appeared on her face when she fought the other nurse teachers. Dog Day is the most underrated character of all, and despite the fact that he's been given the least amount of time, he's already managed to make a huge number of Poppy Playtime fans fall in love with him. Dog Day is one of the 8 smiling creatures that the developers have officially revealed to us. He is a very friendly creature who never wanted to hurt anyone, and unlike his companion Catnap, Dog Day did not obey the prototype and did not fight on its side. On his cardboard, we can hear a very interesting message that we should not stay here and we should run away. He repeats the same message later in his monologue. He also told us a lot of interesting things. Let's listen to what he told us.
Catnap. The prototype is his god, and this is what he does to heretics. These little toys follow Catnap to avoid that very fate. And in return, they are fed. We try to fight it. The prototype's control. I am the last of the smiling critters.
From his monologue, we can understand that he is the last survivor of all the smiling critters. But then there is a reasonable question why he did not say a word about Catnap, who was still alive at that time. Maybe after the betrayal, all the other smiling critters turned their backs on Cat and no longer considered him their friend. Well, and it was also Dog Day who told us that the prototype was Catnap's boss, and that we should try our best to get out of this place to save what's left of Playtime Co. But the most interesting thing for me was the fact that Dog Day could have become the prototype's assistant, and then his body would have been intact, but he refused. For what he paid for, and as he said himself, the prototype killed the heretic. In general, we can say that there was no malice in the actions or words of our unfortunate dog, and he is probably the only positive character among those we have not yet seen. And now the saddest part, after which you will discover all the secrets of Dog Day and get the answer to the main question. Is Dog Day really dead, and will he be able to come back in Chapter 4? Before the angry toys rushed to devour what was left of Dog Day, he begged us to run as fast as we could to find Poppy and help her. By the way, it was Dog Day who told us the truth about the smiling critters. They are all under the control of Catnap, and it is he who makes them do such terrible things just to survive. More specifically, Catnap feeds these toys if they obey him, and after the toys jumped on Dog Day's body and took it over, that's when the chase began. But it wasn't Dog Day that was being chased, it was just his body under the control of the toys, but luckily in the end we were able to escape and close the door right in front of him. And in that case, you can say I'm crazy for speculating about whether he might survive, because it's kind of obvious that he's dead. But is it as simple as many people think? Or is the short amount of time our dog was given no coincidence? And do the developers still have plans for this character? Let's settle this once and for all and find out if Dog Day is really dead or if he managed to survive. And if he managed to stay alive, will we see him in Chapter 4 and as who? Remember what I said a few seconds ago about the closed door? And that is the main key to wondering what will happen to Dog Day next. In the case of Miss Delight, it's actually pretty obvious because we've split her body into 2 pieces that can't be put back together. But let's talk about Dog Day. I have some theories about what really happened to him and what will happen next. Let's agree that you will listen to all the possibilities and then write in the comments which theory you like best. And if you don't like any of my theories, you can always write your own version in the comments. We all remember that Dog Day mentioned Poppy several times during his monologue. And that tells us that they know each other quite well and have probably seen each other several times. And now I'm going to tell you something you probably never thought of. Let's remember who Poppy mentioned but we've never seen. Of course I'm talking about one of the most mysterious characters in Chapter 3, Ollie. What if Dog Day is Ollie? Maybe he's the one who's been helping us all along, in which case I can safely say that we have a good chance of seeing him back in Chapter 4. After all, as I said, we can't be sure that Dog Day is really dead, which means that after we close the door, all the monsters that took over Dog Day's body could have just left him and left Dog Day to die. which means that our beloved Poppy could very well pick him up and perform some sort of rescue and bring Dog Day back to life. And in this case, our Dog Day will be one of the most ardent opponents of the prototype. And since I'm sure that Chapter 4 will be mainly dedicated to the prototype, most likely even somewhere in the beginning of the new chapter, we will get another call from Ollie, and after a few seconds we will see Poppy together with Ollie holding a phone, and this mysterious boy will be Dog Day. This next theory is a two-way theory, and it's actually the craziest one you're going to hear today. But I have no right to keep it from you, at least because you might smile a few times while listening. First, let's imagine the moment when the prototype and Dog Day met, and the prototype asked him to become his assistant, but Dog Day refused. I'm sure this happened long before we first saw Catnap, and after that Dog Day realized that if he stayed alive as he was, he would surely die. And there's this crazy theory that in order to survive, Dog Day built a suit that looked like him and put it on someone from Smiling Critters. Like Bobby Bearhug, and pre-cut their vocal cords to make their voice rougher, so instead of Dog Day getting the wrath of the prototype and Catnap, it was our sweet Bobby. That's the craziest thing you'll hear today, but I had to tell you. But what if you believe that Dog Day actually did something similar? He actually fought Catnap and got wounded but still managed to survive, and to avoid getting caught, he was able to construct a so-called puppet and provided it in his place. And in that case, we will definitely meet our Dog Day in Chapter 4. Let's look at another option for Dog Day's return in Chapter 4. As far as we understood from the conversation, the prototype really wanted Dog Day to obey him in addition to Catnap. That is, he saw him as a pretty strong character who could help him accomplish his plans. Do you agree that it seems very strange that Dog Day told us that he was the last of the smiling creatures, but on the cardboards of the other creatures, we can clearly hear their screams? So we can clearly understand that each of them refused to cooperate with the prototype and was soon brutally killed. But why was Dog Day the only one that the prototype just wounded and left alive? He could have been around for a long time, but no one touched him, and only after we met him did they try to kill him. I think the prototype intentionally left our dog to die so that he would agree to be his assistant out of desperation. But after Dog Day helped us, the prototype realized that he had no chance to make Dog Day his assistant, and decided to kill him so that after his death he could take his body and somehow reincarnate and achieve his goal for Dog Day. But unfortunately, in this case, we will only see the image of our dog in Chapter 4, and he will definitely fight against us. But you have to agree that it's better for us to forget him forever, as we saw him in Chapter 3, than to let him fall into the hands of a prototype. But what if all of this is just theory? Actually, there is that possibility, but listen to me carefully now. I've already said that theoretically, after the door closes, the Critter's toys could just leave his body and leave him to die. What if we meet Dog Day in a new chapter in exactly the same place we last saw him, and he would be alive, but very weak, but still able to tell us something? That would be really interesting. And now it's time to summarize and answer any questions you may have. Dog Day is indeed the most underrated character who was given too little time. I would even say that it's kind of disrespectful to such a character. I, like many of you, would like to know more about what really happened to him, what he knows about the prototype and Catnap, Dog Day's version of the whole situation with Smiling Critters, and why Catnap was the traitor. Almost none of this information has been told to us, and it is this information that can help us and Poppy defeat the corporation's greatest evil. I think the developers realize how important Dog Day's character can be in the story of the new chapter. And considering the fact that even though we've only seen 3-4 minutes of Dog Day, he already has a huge fan base that insists that Mob Entertainment should bring back our dog. And I agree with every one of them, so I'm 85% sure that Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 will show us Dog Day. Maybe it won't be the main character or one of the main characters, but I think most fans will be satisfied with a small supporting role where Dog Day will tell all the information he knows about this creepy but interesting place. I suggest to start with remembering who is Catnap and why his person was honored with a separate video. Catnap is known to us as Experiment 1188, and his history as one of the main antagonists in the Playtime Factory begins during the famous The Hour of Joy, when Prototype subjugated such monsters as Huggy Wuggy, Kissy Missy, Boxy Boo, Miss Delight, and many Smiling Critters. But Catnap stands out among them all, as he has a separate history with Prototype. Let me remind you that Catnap considers Prototype to be his god. He built a cult in his honor. From the words of Catnap's former comrade, Dog Day, we learn that he killed everyone who didn't want to obey Prototype, even his friends from Smiling Critters, leaving only a part of Dog Day to suffer chained to a cage.
That thing, Catnap, the Prototype is his god, and this is what he does to heretics. These little toys follow Catnap to avoid that very fate, and in return, they are fed
As I recalled earlier, Catnap is known as Experiment 1188. So this experiment was a little orphan boy named Theodore Gramble who was kept at Playcare. After all the manipulations to turn Theodore Gramble into Catnap, he was put in charge of the infamous Home Sweet Home, the main center of Playcare, where these horrible experiments on orphans were conducted. So what exactly is Catnap? Catnap's monstrous shape resembles a cat covered in purple fur. Catnap has two forms, one normal, in which he is in most of his time, and the other demonic, which is activated when an attack is imminent. Another distinctive feature of Catnap is his red gas, which causes hallucinogenic effect to everyone. We can guess about it from the scene with the dead back in Poppy Playtime Chapter 1 Huggy Wuggy, after our character inhaled this red gas. Many are still wondering what happened to Catnap in the final scene. I have some theories on this, which I am willing to voice to you. My first theory, which is probably the most popular among Poppy Playtime fans, is that Prototype simply killed Catnap in order to take his body and his abilities for himself. Because as we can learn from Mommy Longlegs, Prototype takes the remains of monsters in order to make them part of himself.
What have you done? You make me part of you! You can't do this to me!
My next theory is not so popular. Namely, Prototype decided to take the exhausted Catnap, who was badly hurt during the attack on our character, so that he would not finally die and be eaten by the monsters living in the Playtime factory. Maybe it's really true, and Catnap got off with little blood, and after the help of Prototype, he will recover, and we will be able to see him in the new part of the game. Because Catnap was very loyal to Prototype, he killed all those who did not obey him, created a cult of victims in the name of Prototype. Was it also that Prototype just killed Catnap at the end? I really don't want it to be true. Hence another question, should we expect Catnap in Part 4 of Poppy Playtime? And if so, in what role? I have a couple of theories on these questions that I'm willing to share with you. So, I think that Catnap is definitely worth waiting for in Poppy Playtime, but whether it is worth waiting for him in the next part, I don't have a definite answer. In my opinion, the developers have done a great job to introduce and popularize this character. A huge number of banners, VHS tapes, one of the main roles in the game, a huge attention in the trailer, and many other things were done by Mob Entertainment staff in relation to Catnap. And is it all to show him for a little bit in the game and immediately kill him? It sounds even stupid. Another theory of mine has to do with the famous The Hour of Joy VHS tape that made a lot of noise among Poppy Playtime fans. Namely the fact that it showed pretty much every character we saw in the game, but not Boxy Boo. Yes, Boxy Boo is already in the Project Playtime game, but in the main story we could see him only on this VHS tape, and I suppose that the next, fourth part of the game will be dedicated to him, and maybe he will also somehow suffer at the hands of Prototype, and maybe in the next parts of the game we will be able to see the confrontation of all the main antagonists against the most important villain from Poppy Playtime universe, Prototype. I have another theory about Catnap's involvement in the fourth chapter of Poppy Playtime. It could be that in this chapter we will see an epic confrontation between Catnap and his leader Prototype, because of the disagreements that could arise between them in the final scene, and it is possible that Catnap will take all of Prototype's powers and we will have a new main villain. I believe that this theory also has a place. There is a lot of discussion among my subscribers about the fate of Smiling Critters. Many of you say that they all died at the hands of Catnap, as we can hear from Dog Day.
We tried to fight it, but Prototype's control. I am the last of the Smiling Critters.
And many of you believe that they are still alive and that they will get their due place in the plot of Poppy Playtime. I have two theories about this, which I'm happy to share with you. The first one, and the simplest one, is that they are really dead, and that they will exist in the game either as mini Smiling Critters or as parts of the Prototype body. This theory is probably the most popular among fans. And the second theory is that Catnap deliberately lied to Dog Day, and all other Smiling Critters are actually alive, and we will be able to see them in new versions of the game. But why would Catnap lie to Dog Day about his comrades? Perhaps in this way Catnap wanted to make Dog Day suffer even more, or perhaps Catnap has his own plan, which he did not want to disclose to anyone, and to realize it, no one should know about it. And what we should expect from the patron of Catnap, from the one who provoked the terrible The Hour of Joy, as a result of which a lot of employees of Playtime Factory died, from Prototype. As we have already mentioned before, from the participants of The Hour of Joy we were not shown only Boxy Boo, Most likely we will see their confrontation in the next part of the game, or maybe Mob Entertainment developers will decide to add completely new characters to add more mystery to the game, or they will remember about the characters they showed in the previous versions of the game, but did not involve them in the story. A good example is the dinosaur Brawn, about which there is even a VHS tape on Mob Entertainment's YouTube channel. But many people are worried about another question. When will he show his face? When will we see his appearance? And is it true that he collects the bodies of our favorite monsters only to build himself a new body? I can only assume that the theory that Prototype collects the remains of monsters in order to rebuild his body is the most probable, and most likely in the 4th chapter, we will finally show the result of his efforts, and we will see our favorite monsters. But not in the usual form, but only in the form of parts of a new body Prototype. And to prove the validity of this or that theory, we should wait for a new trailer from Mob Entertainment. Hopefully, they will give us some clues about it. And that's the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it, and bye-bye.